Many, like Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, are predicting that a crash in the Airbnb market will lead to a crash in the housing market. In this video, we will take a look if this is true. Let's first take a look at the Airbnb market. During the pandemic, Airbnb saw its biggest increase in supply ever. It was like a gold rush as people rushed in to cash in on the craze. And just like the gold rush, not everyone who jumped in had the right experience. The big change during the pandemic was that people had the flexibility to move all over the world and still do their jobs. The result of this is that a lot of lower-cost cities got a huge pandemic boost, such as Phoenix, Scottsdale, Boise, Austin, Nashville, Las Vegas, Dallas, Houston, and many parts of Florida. These lower-cost areas saw a huge increase in demand and real estate prices skyrocketed, with some markets almost doubling over a 3-year period from 2020 to 2023. If you bought a property in one of these cities in 2020, you just couldn't lose. The value skyrocketed and rents nearly doubled in a lot of cases. Also, these cities saw huge increases in their populations from more expensive cities, resulting in huge demand for short-term rentals. If you owned a short-term rental from 2020 to 2022, it didn't matter how bad of an operator you were, you did really well. Another trend that we saw during the pandemic was that the once sleepy, rural, or scenic areas got a huge boost. We're talking about places like Joshua Tree, Lake Arrowhead, Sedona, Mammoth, Yosemite, and Lake Tahoe. Some of these rural areas were able to command sky-high prices as many people in the pandemic wanted to get away to isolated areas. We're talking about $400 a night for a small cabin in Joshua Tree, or $500 a night for a small cabin in Lake Tahoe. Just like the gold rush, when people saw returns like this, they rushed in. Naturally, the supply of Airbnb skyrocketed all over the US, especially in these rural areas. Now that the pandemic is over, travel trends have changed. People don't want to stay in a teepee house in Joshua Tree and pay $500 a night. Also, some of those cities that got the biggest price increases, like Boise, Idaho, are now seeing the biggest declines in value. Also, with the economy softening, a lot of employers have the power to require workers back to the office. Most short-term operators will tell you that demand has softened considerably in 2023. Some areas have seen demand drop by over 50% and in some cases 75%. The ones that have been hit hardest are the rural areas that got the biggest jump during the pandemic. Here are the main reasons the Airbnb market might crash. Number one, regulation. One of the biggest challenges facing cities across the US is housing affordability. Consumers are getting squeezed like never before, and most of their budgets are going toward housing. Since Airbnbs have become so popular, many have rushed in to run Airbnb businesses, which has resulted in reduced rental listings. This has pushed rental rates higher and is making housing unaffordable for many lower and middle income households. The result of this is that cities are fighting back and implementing rules regulating the explosion of Airbnbs. New York City has just implemented even stricter rules, and the number of listings has dropped by over 50%. While rents are still high nationwide, there are some Airbnb owners who will be forced to sell if they can't rely on short-term rental income. One of the main reasons Airbnb owners will sell is because they can't operate as an Airbnb anymore due to regulations, and we're seeing this trend across the nation in some pockets. Number two, the value proposition for short-term rentals has changed. Airbnb became popular because it was viewed as a cool, charming alternative to staying in a hotel. Also, most guests felt better about renting from another person. Fast forward to 2023 and many short-term rentals have become corporatized. Also, guests are sick and tired of paying exorbitant fees and having to do a laundry list of chores upon leaving the property. The result of this is that people are thinking twice about booking short-term rentals, as many operators are facing big declines in demand because Airbnbs are too expensive and not as cool anymore. Number three, travel trends. Travel trends change with the times. Many cities that were sizzling hot with demand during the pandemic have cooled considerably. There are many Airbnb landlords who rushed in and bought a big portfolio of homes in the same area in hopes of cashing in on the craze. As demand declines, some of these owners will get pushed into selling. Number four, recession. It was crazy to see people paying $500 a night to stay in a teepee house or $400 a night to stay in an Airstream. But that's what happened during the pandemic, but it's not happening anymore. Budgets are tighter, consumers are pickier. If we add to this a full-blown recession, demand will definitely decrease. The result of this is that many more owners will be forced to sell. Okay, so what's the bottom line? Can an Airbnb crash lead to a crash in housing? Let's talk real numbers. In the first quarter of 2023, there were 144 million units of housing in the US compared to 1.2 million available short-term rentals like Airbnb, according to AirDNA analysis. Housing inventory is at lows that we have not seen in a generation. We currently have just over 1.5 million units of housing on the market. If just 25% of Airbnb owners were forced to sell, that would increase the housing inventory by 300,000 units. That would represent an increase in nationwide housing inventory of 20%, which is significant. If that coincides with a bad recession, it can definitely lead to trouble in the housing market, as many others could be forced to sell as well. One of the most important points for the housing market right now is inventory. A bad recession can force many Airbnb owners, along with others, to sell. That can be a tipping point that will cause a downturn in housing. Here's my big prediction. Yes, there will be an Airbnb crash in certain markets that got way too oversaturated. Basically, any rural, scenic market that didn't limit the number of Airbnbs and got a doubling or tripling of Airbnb supply will crash. We're talking Joshua Tree, Sedona, Lake Arrowhead, Savannah, or any other rural scenic place like this. But will an Airbnb crash cause a crash for the entire housing market? I say no, given that housing is on pretty decent footing and given there are only 1.2 million Airbnb units total compared to 144 million housing units nationwide. That means Airbnbs are less than 1% of the total housing stock. But the Airbnb crash will definitely impact the oversaturated markets. It'll impact and crash the rural scenic markets first. It'll also impact the pandemic boom cities that got huge increases in inventory like Phoenix, Reno, Boise, Las Vegas, and Dallas. Lastly, it'll start impacting the cities that are implementing strong regulations like New York and Los Angeles. So overall, no nationwide crash, but definitely crashes in certain areas. If you're an Airbnb operator and you're seeing demand drop significantly or crash, get out while you still can because real estate prices are still amazingly strong. If you enjoyed my video, please push the like button and I wish you a great day.